Hi, I'm Paul Duchesne. Welcome to Mama Paul's video podcast. We're going to do chapter 5, Remember Professional Ethics, from Tim Snyder's On Tyranny. And we've been working with the graphic edition. We've been working with the graphic edition of the little 3x5 pocketbook that Tim put out about 3 years ago. He has 15 books out, 40 different languages. He's a professor at, I believe, Yale University, a professor of history, and he's been studying the rise of authoritarianism in Europe throughout the 20th century. The title of the book is 20 Lessons from the 20th Century. So each chapter is a different lesson. And the chapter this week that we're doing is called Remember Professional Ethics. So why don't I just bring the little visual up here. We'll put it on the whole page there. And the words that accompany the Remember Professional Ethics are: when political leaders set a negative example, professional commitments to just practice become more important. It's hard to subvert a rule of law state without lawyers, or to hold show trials without judges. Authoritarians need obedient civil servants, and concentration camp directors need businessmen interested in cheap labor. And these are the words that are underneath that little picture there. The biggest thing I think that's sort of funny about this is the professional ethics is almost a complete oxymoron in today's day and age. They seem to be out the window on a lot of levels in a lot of places. So he opens up the chapter by talking about how Hans Frank was Adolf Hitler's personal lawyer, and in 1939, when he invaded Poland, he put Hans in charge of Germany. Now, the picture that they have on page, let me bring up the picture for the next picture on the page here, and this is just really stunning. There's the picture. You see the three men in the forest, and then you see the axe to the side. Well, Hans Frank once boasted that there weren't enough trees to make the paper for the posters that would be needed to execute all the people that wanted to kill. There wouldn't be enough paper from the trees to make posters for all the executions they were going to carry out. This was the boast he made as he's taking charge of Poland after they invaded Poland. Holy mackerel. Hitler chose after he annexed Austria, another one of his lawyers, Arthur Suus Inquart, later ran the occupation of the Netherlands. So he had two lawyers that he put in charge of these countries as they were invading across Europe. Sound familiar with the Ukraine situation today? Lawyers were vastly overrepresented among the commanders of the real long German word here. Basically, it's the task force that was responsible for murdering the Jews, the Gypsies, the elites in Poland, disabled, handicapped people, communists, anybody that didn't fit the blue-eyed, blonde-haired Aryan look were subject to being exterminated, and mostly lawyers were in charge of doing it all. He goes on here. I'll take the picture down there. He goes on the page here, Timothy, talking about how German physicians took part in these ghastly experiments. Businessmen exploited the labor in the camps, and the civil servants, from the ministers down to the secretaries, recorded it all and did the paperwork necessary to make everything function. The civil servants dotted the I's, crossed the T's, and make sure all of the numbers added up. He makes this other statement, and this is where it gets oxymoronic. If lawyers had followed the norms, if doctors had accepted rules of surgery, if businessmen hadn't endorsed slavery, if bureaucrats had refused to handle paperwork involving murders, if. Well, none of those ifs happened. None of this happened because they didn't. They went along with this. And they didn't follow the norms. They didn't follow the norms at all. There were no professional ethics. He sort of ends the chapter by saying there's no such thing as, quote, just following orders, which became infamous during Eichmann's trial back in the 60s. Adolf Eichmann was tried At these trials, I believe, if I recall correctly, I think we saw them on television. And anyway, the term just following orders became real popular during that time. That's what a lot of these guys said there. If members of the profession confuse their specific ethics with the emotions of the moment, they can find themselves saying and doing things that they might previously have thought unimaginable. The four groups that we've got here that he talks about were lawyers, doctors, businessmen, and bureaucrats. And the lawyers are probably the biggest group of people that Trump has around him, and as opposed to, say, Putin, who mostly had more businessmen around him, but they both have all these shills around them. Trump has this plethora of lawyers around them, and it starts with let me see if I've got his picture here. There it is. There's the poster from the motion picture about Roy Cohn. Roy Cohn, ruthless, unscrupulous, powerful, flamboyant, and notorious Roy Cohn. And I believe I got a picture of Roy right in back of me here. Whoops, right, nope, over there. There's Roy and Donald. There's Roy and Donald. They started to get connected around in the late 70s, although it's debatable exactly when they started to get connected. Roy Cohn was notoriously in-the-closet gay Republican, and him and Donald, I don't know whether Donald has the same predilections or not, but Donald generally doesn't treat women very well, and he seems to have a few show women around him other than his daughter. So I don't know what his relationship was with Roy, and Roy died of AIDS in 1988. Donald's father, Fred, cautioned Donald against going into Manhattan because Dad did business with the Gambino family, and it was mostly the Gallo brothers in Manhattan. And he warned Donald. He said, "Well, I'm not real friendly with these guys, so maybe you're better off staying in Queens." Well, the Gambino family that taught Fred how to doctor the books at the very least. Roy Cohn comes along, and Roy Cohn was the guy that was the McCarthy hearing lawyer who put the Rosenbergs in the electric chair, and he was Donald's lawyer, not Donald, Nixon's lawyer. And I'll go to my big screen here, to go to the widescreen just for a second. It was Roy Cohn who famously gave Nixon the V for victory, which he used all the time, and Roger Stone also uses the V for victory, which he learned from Roy Cohn. So Roy Cohn is Roy Cohn was, he never went to jail, but he was indicted 3 times for bribery, extortion, and money laundering, the 3 keys to Donald Trump's whole empire: bribery, extortion, money laundering. Roy Cohn is considered one of the most despicable lawyers in American history. He dies in 1988 from AIDS, and when he dies from AIDS, that's when Donald stopped doing business with the Italian mob and started doing business with the Russian mob. That was the change that happened when Roy Cohn died. Other than Roy Cohn, Giuliani is the other piece of slime who he has as a major lawyer nowadays. And Giuliani looked like he was prosecuting a whole bunch of mafia people when he was the AG in Manhattan back in the 80s. I suspect, and I've been trying to make a little chart about this. I'm not going to get into it deeply now, but I suspect that when Giuliani was prosecuting the mob in Manhattan in the 80s and gained prominence for doing it, there were some families he was prosecuting and other families he wasn't. And there was a little rift between a group of Sicilians that wanted to take him out and another group within the city that didn't want to take Giuliani out. So much like when these gangsters go around and they shoot somebody, it's not like they're against shooting everybody. They're just trying to gain more power by getting rid of some of their competition. And I suspect that that's what's going on with Giuliani and his prosecution of mobsters during the 80s. Because at the end of the day, if you look at the rest of his career, from his fabrication of his BS at Ground Zero to everything he's done with Donald Trump, the guy is worse than some of these other lawyers. worse than some of these other lawyers. And you've got Sidney Powell. Sidney Powell, that's the tall gal there, always dressed very well. She never has makeup dripping down her face like Rudy does. She's the one who was mostly prominent during the Michigan when they were going to kidnap the governor of Michigan, and all these right-wing militia people are out. She's been deeply involved in the Stop the Steal, the legal aspects of it, and then Alan Dershowitz props up his ugly head now and then, and he's ready to defend Trump down to the last. The last one in the whole group that I'll mention is Bill Barr. Bill Barr, in fact, the reason it was funny, I was looking at this today, and then I saw he has a book out that just came out today. Yeah, One Damn Thing After Another is the name of the book. One Damn Thing After Another. It was just advertised in the paper today. And Bill Barr is the guy who famously broke the rule of law. There were a number of editorials in the paper back, I believe it was about a year ago in the spring, about Bill Barr breaking the rule of law. He turned the Justice Department into the Department of Injustice, to be perfectly frank about it. When the Mueller investigation came out, he rewrote the summary to make it look the complete opposite of what Mueller was saying. He was squashing the whistleblower complaint about the Ukrainian deal that Trump was making, trying to hold the money back from the Ukraine, which led to the first impeachment of Trump. He was undermining the prosecutions of Michael Flynn and Roger Stone in the Justice Department directly. He fired the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, who was investigating Trump. He fired him for these bogus, no good reasons. And the last thing that he was sort of famous for was he was claiming that the mail-in ballots, he was amplifying the lies that the mail-in ballots were fraudulent. Now, that was right up to the election. Then after the election, when the statistician that was in the administration came out and said it was the most honest election that ever took place, Bill Barr agreed with him, and that's when him and Donald started to buck heads, and Bill Barr left before the end of the year. But up till that point, he had gone along with everything that Donald had wanted, everything. And he literally was infamously editorialized for breaking the rule of law in America. So Donald Trump has an entourage of lawyers right and left all around him. Doctors, I don't have that much to say about doctors today. Whoops, I should get the other picture out of there, right? Get Roy's picture out of there. It's one of the mistakes I made. I forget to take the overhead shots down sometimes, and it doesn't look good. I'll try to be more conscious of that. And let's get the camera right here too. As you can see, I am the switch man and the graphics man and the audio guy. It's a one-man show in here right now. But sometimes the right hand doesn't exactly know what the left hand is doing, and I'm not watching my monitor closely enough to keep up with it all. Okay, the doctors. The main doctor that comes to mind right now is Anthony Fauci, who's well, we had a few more. The woman who was there during the Trump era, who was sitting there nodding her head, with the scarves around her neck. I don't even remember her name. But Fauci would be on one side, she'd be on the other side. She'd have her scarves and look very nice. And Donald would be saying these absurd things, and she'd be nodding her head yes. And Fauci wasn't. Fauci didn't seem to be going along with Trump. And up till now, I haven't had a big problem with Fauci. The idea about wearing masks and getting vaccinations, I'm okay with. I've been recently introduced to a book by Robert Kennedy Jr., which may or may not be completely valid, which points out that Fauci is a shill for the pharmaceutical companies. It may be true. It may absolutely be true, and Fauci may be making a fortune from the pharmaceutical companies because of the vaccinations that are going out. Having said that, I don't think his advice is that wrong about masks and vaccinations. So I think he's got one foot in the okay and one foot maybe in the not okay. And I'm sure people have some opinions about him right there. The other guy that's a complete bozo is, well, we still have him here, yeah. I was looking him up earlier. This guy he's now the Surgeon General. Whoops, there he is. There's his picture. He's now, can I come in closer? No, I can't really get closer. Anyway, there he is. And he's the Surgeon General in Florida right now. And his name is Joseph Ladapo. And this guy was appearing, he was on television quite a few times in the last year and a half. If you remember the group of about 20-odd doctors with their white coats and their, I don't know, America something or other little insignias on, and they were endorsing the ivermectin and the bleach, and one of their members was talking about women's bodies being invaded by the devil, and, sort of a little QAnon-esque conspiracies, all folded into 20 guys that are standing in front of, I think, the Supreme Court, maybe it was the Capitol about a year ago, on the steps there with the microphone, and had one after another speaking. And they all just had, complete BS coming out of their mouths about weirdness going on. Well, this guy is now the Surgeon General of Florida. When he was in front of the committees that were questioning him about his position that he was going to be appointed to, he wouldn't even answer questions about, do you think people should be wearing masks? What do you think about the vaccine? He would not answer them. He would go on to these long tirades, saying nothing, insulting a representative who even asked him a question. So naturally, DeSantis appointed him the Surgeon General. This was just, I think, 2 days ago in the paper. So, boom, let's shut our life on him. He's the biggest doctor that I can see some weirdness around, although there was a whole group of them, like I said, on these steps, famously in a few of these pictures last year. Businessmen, the other little group here, businessmen, well, Donald continuously surrounds himself with businessmen at Mar-a-Lago. Not necessarily in his office, but at Mar-a-Lago. In fact, just the other night, he was bragging to these businessmen about Ukraine being such a cheap, I think he called it a $2, Putin the genius, got in real cheap for like a $2 deal. He was able to take over this large territory with all this nice land and all these nice people on it for only $2, is the expression he used. He actually said this the night before last at Mar-a-Lago to a room filled with hundreds of people at a dinner. He gave one of his rambling remarks, and in the middle of this, he's literally bragging about how little money it cost Putin to take over the Ukraine. I mean, the guy is sick. Over here, the other big businessman Donald did a lot of business with was Jeffrey Epstein, who is now dead. One of Epstein's proteges or partners is also, another one died this week in jail. Two of them who have been arrested have died in jail. And Giselle Maxwell, his girlfriend, is trying to get a new trial based on the fact that one of the people on her jury had been abused as a child, sexually abused as a child, and didn't check it off on the box. It was a guy. So that's interesting. But Jeffrey Epstein, another sleazebag of American businessmen, those are Donald Trump's people. Last but not least, the group over here are bureaucrats. And I was one of those bureaucrats for a long time at AT&T. And over time, at the end of the day, I wrote a 17-page letter of resignation accusing them of lying, cheating, and stealing. I made hundreds of copies and gave it out to everybody from the janitor up to the vice president in the building. It was in the Western area. It was the engineering office on Montgomery Street in San Francisco. And there were people from about 6 or 7 of the Western states who were there. So everybody that got a copy of the letter made copies of it and sent it out to the other states, to the offices that they had come from. Within about 2 weeks of me giving out this letter, a huge uproar was created within the phone company's Western area. The newspaper board did a whole story about this, and they went out and they interviewed people. And I don't know what happened in the other states, but of the couple of hundred people in the office that I came from, nobody would publicly go on the record agreeing with me, although most of them were agreeing with me and thanking me for writing it and doing this type of thing. But when they were confronted by the company, they were good bureaucrats who went along to stay and keep going along. So I was one of the few people that left, and that was sort of the end of my corporate political activism, and I've been sort of doing it ever since. All right, that's it. We did 20 minutes. I think we covered it. So don't just follow orders. If you're in a profession, take a look and read what the rules of the ethics are. Do the best you can. Be good. Peace, patience, persistence, and we'll see you soon. Thanks for joining.